Alright, so today I'm going to be doing a kind of a BlurMoCurves tutorial, and this is going to be my first ever tutorial, so sorry if I kind of fuck up a little bit. So just to start, I have kind of a sample kind of just Twixtered clip that I'm just going to use for this tutorial's sake, like right here, and I'm going to be applying the Twixter to this. I'll just kind of extend this and then sync it to a beat so then we can kind of see more clearly. Alright, so I'm just gonna hit this beat right here for an example. There we go, that's lined up. That's good enough, whatever. So for BlurMoCurves, it's really good for transitions, for let's say kind of zooming in from here to here. And what we're gonna want to do is, or this is what I like to do anyway, I like to cut a couple frames towards the end. It's however much you kind of feel like, and you're going to look for your BlurMoCurves right here in under Sapphire, and if you don't have Sapphire, you just get it. It's pretty easy. Oops, this is Blur Channels, BlurMoCurves. And what you're going to want to do when you're trying to apply a zoom in is you're going to mess with Z dist. So Z is kind of like how close it gets to the camera. That you'll see here is if I when I adjust this, it gets closer and further away. And this is the difference between event pan crop and BlurMoCurves. Here is that you can see the blur being applied. Alright, so set this back to 1 because that's the base value. So let's just move this back a couple frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish frames, whatever. That about that much works typically. Then let's move to the second to last frame so you can see kind of where you're going, because if you put it right here, then you just see the next clip. So to zoom in, we're going to go with a value under 1. Let's just zoom that into here about. And this is kind of just a linear movement right now, so we kind of want to make it a little bit more smooth. What we're going to do is going to apply, right click on this, apply the slow fade, and that'll kind of just give it a more dynamic movement. And we'll just kind of add a smooth to this and drag it to the end. So now we have a zoom in. There we go. And just kind of note that scene selection is really important here. Because she is so far away, I decided to go with a kind of like a faster and stronger zoom in. What we're going to want to do here though is we're going to want to apply the BlurMoCurves as well. You don't have to really cut the first 2 frames if you want. It doesn't really matter. So now we're going to do kind of we're going to start the first frame, sorry for right here. We're going to start from the first frame about right here, and we'll just make it like, well, we could do like this. There we go. And then we're going to skip forward about the same amount of frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, as we did earlier. Apply this, right, another keyframe right here by clicking this button, and we're going to go back to 1. And to get rid of these black bars, black borders, we're gonna put reflect on, so just kind of reflects that, and you'll see here that, oh, don't want that. Alright, you'll see here that it just kind of reflects and gets rid of them. It reflects the image shown. Alright, so basically now that the values have been set from 1.3 and then here, it just kind of adds like a continuous motion from the last clip so that it doesn't look so choppy. And we're going to apply a fast fade because we're coming back into the regular clip. Now this, if I were to like actually try a lot harder on this, I'd make it zoom like not exactly towards the center, but rather up a little bit, because this clip comes in centered on her face. So this is like, if I zoom in from here, it kind of centers on her like pelvis area, and that looks kind of strange. But yeah, normally I would apply that from there, and that's a zoom in with BlurMoCurves. Let's pre-render this if we could get a little smoother. Oh, it actually looped perfectly. I didn't mean for this to loop. And here's like kind of example of an old edit of mine. So that's a zoom in. And we're going to do something else now. We're gonna mess with a slide. So we're gonna reset this value back up to 1 so it doesn't mess with anything else. Or rather, I should start with this one. Yeah, this one's reset back to 1. So I'm resetting this one back to 1 because we're gonna mess with a different value. We're going to mess with Shift X. So as you can see here, this kind of moves along the x-axis, and we're going to apply the reflect, because if we don't, then it's going to have those black things again. So now you can see no black borders. Alright, so we're going to slide, let's just slide to the right for this example. So since this, I haven't applied the keyframe yet, but let's go however many frames about here again, and then apply another one at the end. We're going to change the value to like 0.3-ish. This is what generally works for me, but you might want to do a little bit of research and see what you like for yourself, and this can vary across different scenes, so don't think that you can just use the same value every single scene. And we're going to get rid of the zoom out here. Take off the keyframing on that, put a keyframing back on here. Let's move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 frames about. Place another keyframe and then move towards the beginning. So since this value starts at 0, if we want to continue the movement from the last one, we're going to go with negative 0.3, so just the negative of the previous value we had. And this is a very linear curve, so we're going to have to change that with a fast fade. Add a smooth at the end. And then here we go. It should be working. There we go. So if the more you play with these values, kind of the smoother that it can get. And obviously this doesn't make sense with the scenes that I've chosen, but since this is just an example to teach you how it works, that should do. And basically you could just kind of flip the values here if you want to change it from a slide kind of to the right here to a slide on the left. Just change the values, make it from positive to negative, and you'll get basically the same results. You can also do the same thing with up and down, just change the values similarly to this one. And next we're going to do rotate, so set that back to 0, and we're going to keyframe rotate. So I'll just go about here again, place a keyframe, move to the second to last frame or so. Doesn't really matter because we're going to move it later anyway. We're going to, I don't know, rotate 180-ish. This looks a little silly right now. We're going to go slow again into smooth. This is typically what makes it the most smooth in my opinion. I usually don't use rotates because it just doesn't work for most scenes that I've come across, but I have seen a couple times where it's used well, so use it as you will. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Another keyframe. There's no real reason to use 9 in particular. That's just kind of what I've picked for this tutorial. And then I move back here, and we're basically going to change the rotate to negative 180. It's not going to be exact 'cause it's just a tutorial. And we're going to do fast into smooth. And oh, I actually did it the wrong way. Yeah, I actually did it the wrong way. I don't think this one's negative. This one is actually positive 180, I believe. Did I do this correctly? Yeah, there we go. It's positive, sorry. The negative applies to the X and Y axis changing. So this is really rough. Usually you wouldn't rotate this much because it ends up looking a little silly like that. So there you go. This is kind of like an example of just what I did. you see here, this is a scroll down, that's a shift on the y-axis, shift in the y-axis again, shift in the z dist here, z dist again, and this is actually like a shake and BlurMoCurves, so that's a little bit different than what I've shown here. But yeah, that's my BlurMoCurves tutorial. There's other values that you can mess in this, such as like the brightness and like the shutter shift and other stuff like that. One way to mess with the brightness is you can keyframe the brightness and then just kind of increase the brightness as the thing goes on. I'm just going to use some rough values just for the sake of the tutorial. Keyframe that and then just do like slow or some shit. I don't fucking know. Let's throw that at the end so you can have like it brightens as it's rotating or shifting or whatever, and just do the same thing for the second thing here, and you'll basically have a flash as it's changing scenes. So that's another thing you can do with it. Alright, so that's been my tutorial, and if you want to see more tutorials like this, just leave it in the comments below or whatever, and I'll see if I can do any more, and I'll see ya.